Hi, and welcome to this panel named The Future of Digital Finance in the EU. And this panel is connected to the previous keynote by Matthias Levin, that is also here to join the discussion. I'm Louise, and I'm the track leader for this track, and I will also moderate this panel. And since the EU have done a massive work around digital finance for the last few years, and digitalization is one of the prior questions to this commission, I'm very curious to hear more about and how this will affect the fintech industry. And therefore, we've invited representatives from the EU institutions, as well as representatives from the banking industry and the fintech industry here in Sweden, to discuss how this might affect the industry and what change this will be the coming years. So this might be a very broad topic, but I think we will have a very interesting time since we're doing a meeting between the private sector and the public sector. And I think this is very important to have a dialogue. So hopefully the audience will think this is very interesting and we will have a nice time. So I will start with an introduction of our panelists. First, we have Matthias, and he's the Deputy Head of Digital Finance at the European Commission. We're also having Jessica Polfjärd, the Member of European Parliament for the Swedish Moderate Party. We also have Henrik Bergman, and he's the Head of Financial Infrastructure at the Swedish Bankers Association. And last but not least, we're having Daniel Kjellén, and he's the CEO and founder of the fintech company Tink. So we're moving right over to the discussion. And first of all, Matthias, thank you for your presentation about the digital finance package and the Commission's work on digital finance. So to follow up on that, what part of the digital finance strategy would you say are the most important part to foster innovation within the financial system, and why?
Thanks, Louise. It's a good question. I think it's difficult to pinpoint a single measure. I think, as you saw from my presentation, it's really a package. And I think that the kind of priorities that we've singled out there and the actions that we propose to take all need to go together in a sense. They have a kind of similar aim, which is really to kind of nurture and harness the potential of digital finance. In the Commission, as I try to kind of, at least in the Financial Services Department, our task is really to kind of help building a kind of single market in the European Union. And a lot of that work consists of kind of breaking down barriers between countries and to establish, instead of national rules, which sometimes make up for these barriers, to have common rules that apply across the single market. And we believe that is important to kind of lay a base on which then financial services can develop, in this case, digital financial services. And we do that by providing clarity about the rules that apply, and that will then allow innovation to take off and scale up. I think that general ambition is kind of reflected throughout the strategy. So let me just perhaps mention a few examples. If you look at what I kind of label as the kind of first priority to kind of the digital single market, for example, the measures on digital IDs is very important, I think, to enable firms to kind of scale up and apply very innovating solutions and tap customers across the single market. The second priority, which was very much focused on what we can do about the rules, is important as well, I think, to kind of ensure that rules that may have been shaped in a kind of another context some time ago also works in the digital finance era. So we have assessed and reviewed the crypto proposals are one example, and we will continue to assess and amend our regulations if we see the need to do so. The third priorities is also important to have clear rules on pooling and sharing of data in financial services. Data is often seen as a kind of an El Dorado in the days to come, but it's obviously also a key area where we need to ensure that everybody, all stakeholders, have trust in the way that data will be shared. So I think there are also the kind of idea about having clarity about the rules so that we can really kind of use the opportunities that data sharing offers is important. And finally, digital finance also comes with risks. And as we all know by bitter experience, the financial sector, in the days that are good, are really great, but they play a key sector, and we need to ensure that it also does not wreak havoc when there are problems. And of course, as digital finance has the potential of transforming financial sector, we also need to have trust that we can uphold our kind of objectives of safety and soundness to unleash the full potential so that also all stakeholders there, be it the supervisory, the public at large, have confidence that these innovations do not come with a cost in terms of stability.
Thank you. And since we're also having a representative from the European Parliament, Jessica, I would like to hear your work around digital finance and fintech. I've heard that the Parliament has a working group on fintech. So what are you doing, and what does the Parliament think about the digital finance package?
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. I am very happy to be a part of this panel, and mostly to listen to the other panelists as well, because I have learned so far that the opportunities are enormous in this field, and my knowledge is just in the beginning of the learning curve, because it's a field where it happens and innovation prospers, and it changes from day to day. So I'm very pleased to be here, and I think it's a great idea to have this conversation and panel. You asked me a couple of questions, and maybe I'll start with the easiest one, and that was the fintech group is doing. I would say it's a group where MEPs, members of the Parliament, can gather and form a group that have the same interest in the field, where we want to learn more, and what we can do, and what will be the next step, and what can be more important for Europe to be competitive and to be in the front, to have the discussion. And we know, as I said in the beginning, it's moving really fast. So I think it's important that we keep updated with the latest information. And we also try to invite speakers that could be teaching us some of the latest discussions. And it has contained different issues about the proposals and currencies and so on. So it's not a very formal group. It's more for those who have a certain interest in these kind of questions. And to move on, and the view on the digital finance package from the European Parliament, I would say it's not a overall the same view. Yes, we are different parties and different groups in the Parliament, but I would say overall that there is an interest, and I know that we will look forward to work on it in the future. And it is a bit hard to summarize it in a short time span, but we have a lot. The package contains quite a lot, and I think we will have some differences in the end. But what we can do to get the sense of the Parliament position, we can look at the text that we have already adopted in plenary a couple of weeks ago, and that was after the Commission had presented the package. And I think that we thought the Parliament that the proposal was timely and also useful and necessary. And it's a crucial step towards bringing legal clarity and developing a new regulatory regime. Some groups considered the package could have gone further on some issues, but I guess that is the normal discussion. And the Parliament role is either to say that the proposal was too ambitious, or to say that it was not enough ambitious. And I would say that will happen almost all the time. But overall, I think the package moves Europe in the right direction. I should also mention that the text that we adopted called for many of the things in the package. And I think that is good. And it's important to keep Europe ahead and to be a front runner. And finally, I could just add the the general view of the Parliament is, I think, very positive. Many of us consider digital finance a key in making sure that Europe is taking the lead globally, and also to offer, a big potential for consumers in Europe.
Thank you so much, Jessica. It's, of course, very interesting to hear the Parliament's view. I guess it's very different from the different party groups, of course, but it's great to hear some of your views, and that there is a big interest in these questions, and also in fintech and the fintech working group. And from the Swedish Bankers Association, and Henrik, I wonder, I know that you've also been a part of this outreach that the Commission did before the digital finance package came alive. So you've been following this process. So I wonder, what do you think are the most important part of the package, and what's your point of, or your view of it?
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be in this panel to talk about it, and it's really good that we have a pre-discussion already beginning last year, because the key is that it's so extensive, this package. When you combine everything that is digital finance and also with payments, there are so many things to say, but overall it's really good to have a strategic way to go to. But then when it comes to the next question, what will then the details be? There are so many things to say. I will pick a few things to just address on high level. One thing that is both for digital and payments, like the market functioning is very important. The same risk, same rules, same regulation, because we're going to do things with like banks have done things for many years, do it with the new players together with fintechs and in a collaborating world. Then I think that is fundamental that we start with those principles. Then we have come to another principle, the consumer protection, which is so important, because we know that especially in this part of the world, customers are so eager to have things that works, and if the protection is not there, it will not fly. So with key things are like open data, access to data. That is easy to say, but how do we do it also where we have some consumer protection and hinder like misuse? That's a very important area. And with that said, next big thing that I want to highlight is the cybersecurity, and that is key. If we don't solve the cybersecurity, we will not have any further acceleration of the digitalization. So that is so important. For the payments part, I will not address that in detail. So more as to sum up what to say, that the harmonization part, yes, really nice and important, but the balance there, not to hamper innovation, because we have like regional initiatives which really flies today, and there are other parts that are not at the same level this time. So to harmonize means also that we have to see that we don't hamper current solutions, and that it goes the wrong direction and even leads to less innovation. And I think that is the but. I said everything is really good, but that is what we look at and see that we cannot stop things that are already working. Then we rather need to be interoperable and things like that.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's very important from a Swedish perspective, that the harmonization don't harm the innovation that we have in Sweden and in the things that we are very forward going when it comes to the different part of the infrastructure and so on. Thank you. And now I'm moving over to Daniel. And from your perspective as a CEO for a fast-growing fintech company, what is your perspective, and what do you think can be done on EU level to provide the right tools for the sector to grow and to be international competitive?
I mean, I remember back in 2012 when we founded Tink by starting to accessing data and to initiate payments through the banks mobile bank APIs, and we went to see most of the banks at the time, and people basically said, you're going to go to jail for this. This is illegal, and it must be stopped immediately. So, I mean, Tink today is a B2B company, and was certainly no B2B market around back then. We even went through the consumer route for a few years. But we also started to go back and forth to Brussels and lobby for this to be regulated. There were a few people on the commission. There were a few Swedish members of the parliament who had a strong opinion and wanted consumers to be better off, to see a level playing field, basically, to foster innovation. And that was a few years of pretty hard work before 2016 then had the adoption of PC2. What that changed was both to provide kind of the regulatory framework, but I think also it showed very clearly to all participants here that what the direction of travel was. And I think that since then you've really seen how banking has gone from closed to open, and that how that is dramatically about to change banking as we know it. So I think the importance cannot be understated, especially given the kind of hostile situation that we saw from incumbents back 2012-13. Since then, we've seen a dramatic shift. We've seen a new generation of bank managers and CEO who wants to bring out fantastic digital services, who wants to compete and collaborate with fintechs. So I think it's been incredibly important that we've ended up where we are today. But I can also see that and I guess that's sometimes the challenge with EU, is that how do you make sure that these rules are followed and implemented in both kind of in a timely manner, but also in a similar manner across Europe. Tink is in 18 markets. And I think if there's two main observation here. One would be that, well, I don't think that anyone is happy about the implementation, because that has been significantly slower than anyone wanted. I think it's also fair to say that different countries interpret the law very differently. And you see that some of these markets really stand out, like the former member UK, who took a completely different approach, not to say, well, we only need to be compliant and this should be with the FSA who regulate these companies, but this should actually be an anti-competition thing. We should make sure that there's a level playing field. And the success of open banking in the UK compared to any other markets, including Sweden, which have had a more regulatory approach to it, has been completely different. Everything is moving in the right direction, but I think we need to remember that everyone's interest is not aligned, and certainly not aligned with end consumers. Hence, regulators, I think, probably when implementing the next level of open banking regulation, need to consider how do we make sure that these regulations, our vision, actually hit the market in a timely manner.
Thank you. Yes, the PSD2 have been a really game changer, I would say, for the fintech industry in Sweden and EU. But of course, there are still some problems in the implementation and on how we're moving forward on that. I would like to ask Jessica again. In this financial package, we have a legislative proposal for an EU-regulation on the digital operational resilience, DORA. Also, Henrik said something about this before, and it's to prevent and mitigate cyber threats. So what's your view on this proposal?
Thank you. Yes, we know that new possibilities and new technologies also creates new risks in the financial system. And I think that it had to be handled in order to guarantee investors and consumers confidence. Experts have pointed out that the operational problems and ICT risks in particular can generate systematic risks for the the whole financial sector. And I think it makes sense really doing this on a union level, given also the cross-border dimension and the level playing field. With that said, we have to find the balance, of course, and that is the struggle. And that was also pointed out by Daniel in his earlier remarks. The balance is sometimes hard to find. And I think that is not unique in this legislative proposal. It's always a struggle. But we have to ensure that the rules and the proportional, in terms of both the features and the entity that fall under the regulation as well as the requirements. So I think the key word is to find the balance in that sense, and to find also the confidence and trust from those who will operate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can be a problem between the risks, and also to see the risks and prevent the risk, but also not to stop the innovation that is going on, and regulate the possible ways to actually create innovation and for new initiatives to grow. And connected to this DORA, this legislative proposal, what is your view on it, Henrik? And what does the Swedish Bankers Association think about it?
First of all, we think that once again that it's a very important topic that needs to be addressed on a European level. We work already today, or the banks work already today in this area a lot. So and actually it's such a wide area. So far what is presented does not seem strange at all. But to foresee the consequences and how much work will it be? Will there be changes in processes, and what will it mean? That is very important, of course, for such a big sector as the banking sector. But so far we are not there to say that it will mean this or that. But on the principle level, it seems very good. Because when it comes to what is the purpose, well, when it comes to financial crime, for sure it's like borderless. And when we get more digital, we need to look on it with cross-border solutions. So for financial crime, we need to combat, and this is a step in the right direction. More details we'd like to highlight is that all the things about identity and how to handle identity and build identity schemes, it mentioned both in the digital part and in the retail payment part. That is really a challenge, because here we have built up nationally. And once again, I want to say that, yes, to find a way to make this interoperable would be the way. We have in Sweden, we have the mobile bank ID, but today it doesn't work cross-border. But everyone has said, yes, without the ID, we use it for so many things. How we can come on and get that to be realized on a European level seems like a huge task that will go on for several years. And once again, that is necessary, but let's not stop what is working today.
Great. Yeah, this on if it would be some kind of European identificational way to do that. I think that is something that the European Commission works on, right, Matthias?
Yeah, absolutely. As mentioned previously, I think the whole scope of the potential of digital ideas to make sure that happens, as Henrik has set out. I mean, we have national approaches that work perfectly well, but it's a matter of getting kind of cross-border recognition that what works well in one country could work in another country, and that not each country kind of sticks close to its own known solutions for digital ideas. And that requires a kind of getting together and agreeing what works and what and the rules that apply. And part of that, there are, as you mentioned, Henrik, very kind of criminal issues around anti-money laundering and stuff like that has to be addressed. We are coming forward with a proposal on that tackles broader issues related to money laundering, but which also will look at issues like this customer due diligence. How do we handle that? What do we think are acceptable methodologies of bringing that on? And that, coupled with a kind of broader work on the digital idea carried out as well, the ADAS regulation, taken together, I think will offer the prospect of kind of facilitating the cross-border use of digital ideas in the EU in the years to come. So absolutely. And also, if I may take the occasion to thank the panelists for the views put forward. Yes, indeed, the European Parliament's resolution that you came up with earlier, or actually just before our digital finance package, was tremendously important for us as well, giving inspiration and ideas. And also the outreach activities that Henrik made reference to were very important in kind of shaping our views, helping that. And also Daniel, wise words on the importance of not only writing rules, but actually ensuring that these rules are then applied and implemented and enforced in a similar manner across the European Union, taking into account, of course, Henrik, what you said, that harmonization should ideally not come at the expense of kind of shutting down functioning things at national level.
Yeah, and I also have another question for you, Matthias, because when we look at the Swedish fintech companies, when they are doing the internationalization and going global in one way, they're first starting with maybe like the Nordic countries, and they're moving over to the EU countries, and there they go. Then they're going global. So the single market for the EU plays a very important role in this. And you also mentioned before that you're working with to prevent or to stop the fragmentation on this digital market. But what more can be done? And maybe Jessica would like to say something on this topic as well after Matthias.
Sure. The battle to tear down barriers to integration is a long-standing one, and we've been I'm only here for about 10, 15 years. I have colleagues in the previous decades who have worked to do that. It tends to be like peeling an onion. You take away one layer, but other barriers come up. But of course, what is enticing about digital finance is that it offers the potential to kind of bypass some of these traditional barriers by just kind of shortcutting some of the kind of traditional layers of intermediaries or the like, or providing new solutions that offers the potential for kind of consumers and providers of services to meet in a much easier way. So what can we do? Well, you will probably think it's a bit strange, paradoxical, but I really do believe that regulation is part of the answer, because in a single market and in financial services, given the concerns of the financial ecosystem as a whole, of which small providers like upstart fintech companies also form part, even though they're small in size, it is difficult to kind of take too much of a step back from a kind of financial stability and integrity kind of concerns. So of course, rather than having 27 member states going about this in different ways, which would not help anyone, I think the kind of common rules is part of a picture. And of course, this is not, when something new comes, it's not about copy-pasting existing frameworks and apply that lock, stock, and barrel to the new providers. No, that doesn't work. But in order to kind of harness the potential, to kind of give these opportunities, I think that also, as was mentioned before by Daniel about the kind of the open banking experience, you need a degree of legislative induced market opening. Otherwise, these things can happen, but to kind of capture its full scale, it needs to be kind of nurtured as well by regulation. And there, of course, as I said, not copy paste, but you need to provide some kind of clarity about the rules that apply in the EU for these things to kind of kick off over time. And but of course, it has to be kind of risk-based in the sense that if the markets are very small, If a niche is very kind of targeted, then applying the full banking framework, for example, to these very kind of limited activities probably doesn't make sense. Proportionality as well. And I think here, without banging our drum too much, I think the MiCA is a kind of an illustrative example. MiCA, by that I mentioned the proposal we've tabled to kind of promote markets in crypto assets. Here, in a sense, it's a similar kind of situation. We had a kind of a market that was taking off, not regulated. We had national regulations coming, which would kind of address and create opportunities and address concerns at national level. It doesn't really work in a single market. So hence we proposed a new bespoke framework, certainly inspired by some of the EU financial services legislations we have in place, but adapted, adjusted to the fact that it's a different technology, it's different kind of operators, and that the markets are really kind of growing from a very low base. So that is, I think, one example of how things may look like going forward.
Thank you. Jessica, do you have a short comment on this? I mean, the single market is the heart of EU. So what do you think about this fragmentation that we see on the digital single market?
So, of course, the market has changed from when EU started to what we are discussing today. And therefore, I think it's extra important that we can discuss and adopt what is happening technically and what is happening innovation-wise in the different areas and sectors. And for that, I think that it needs politicians and that also have a curiosity and knowledge about these changes and for showing the will to keep Europe ahead. I think that Daniel pointed out some problems, and sometimes it's not the legislative. It's the implementation that could differ, and we know that it is difficult to have a common point of view in all of the member countries sometimes. And I would say in all of the fields that I have discussed so far as a member of parliament, everyone wants rules and everyone wants it to be a level playing field. But when it presents new rules, so is it not that rule that we wanted? So I think it's easy to call for more but I think it's more important that we get the right ones, and therefore I think also it is important to have this understanding. And what I'm doing now is a pilot regime, and I think that is a new way of working, and I think that is also extremely important to be brave enough to try new methods when there are new techniques and new challenges. And I think that we can learn from that and maybe use that way in the processes more in the future.
Great. I would like to give the final word to Daniel. I mean, you have both representatives from the European Parliament and the European Commission here now. So what kind of final input would you like to give to them on how they should look on and how they should make the fintech sector even better in Sweden and in Europe?
Well, I think that in the domain of open banking where we operate, we probably first want to see that the current legislation is actually enforced. I think still 95% of our operations is not conducted the way it was implemented. Mostly because most of the banks that implemented APIs, they've just not been functioning enough, and it's a shame. And we want to get there as soon as possible, but it is what it is. We also have a big respect because this is complicated. So let's make sure that this actually works out. But then we talk about open banking. The next step is probably open finance. Tink is accessing data from multiple accounts, whereas it's only the transactional account that is regulated by open banking, and we're probably going to see more about that. I would give a recommendation to look at the UK implementation and see the success of that they've had. and try to copy paste a bit of that when implementing the next generation of open banking or even open finance regulation in Europe.
Thank you so much for that. I think that was really good last words for this panel. And I will follow how this implementation moves forward with the different legislative proposals and also the strategies. And I hope we can keep contact in other formats. And I would just like to say thank you to all the panelists and to the audience. And yes, thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.